Hi friends, welcome back to Abundance of Lovely. Abundance is a plentiful amount, fullness to overflowing. Lovely is what we are full of, and that's love. And so Abundance of Lovely is where you can find the fullness of love. We're on a journey together to discover that. And my words, I pray, bring you closer and closer to the heart of love, which is the heart of God. And so today I'm taking you on a history lesson of Abundance of Lovely. We started in 2014 and it's now 2025. So it's been 11 years of growth, evolution, refining my writing voice, my writing style, as well as the approach, my maturity as a believer in some of the themes that I've been able to tackle now. When I first started this blog, I started with very idealistic, that's the best word, idealistic approaches to the Christian faith and to life. One of the really fundamental turning points early on for me was receiving feedback, and this was in our first/second year of having the blog. I received feedback from a family friend who had commented and remarked that my blogs were not really relatable. They were a bit out of touch. They were naive and simplistic in how they understood the concepts of God in relation to the practicalities, particularly the darkness, the challenges and the sufferings of this world. In those first couple of years on the blog, there's only a few blogs that are left still live. I've taken a few of them down and offline over the years, but at that point in time, I was just focusing only on the good, only on the positive, only on the light, only on the love and the abundance, without at all going into the depths, the darkness, the other contrary places that reveal the beauty and the goodness of those places of light. And so I didn't have a very good balance in the beginning. I needed to learn to uncover and to expose to the light. You'll see that in around the 2016 mark. So we were 2 years into the blog at that point. That's where a massive change happened in my heart and in the nature of the blogs that you see. I really started to wrestle with some more challenging content. I discovered more of my own writing voice and how I was able to communicate complex concepts. I also had this revelation of what I had been putting up. It was, I used the words, a bamboo cave. I had been hiding some of what was really going on beneath the surface, some of the struggles that I was having. And that had been a coping mechanism that I'd had for a long time. And so from 2016 onwards, I started to be able to be more vulnerable in my posts, which hopefully if you go back and you ever look at any of those, you should be able to see that journey to greater and greater degrees of vulnerability over the years. There's been different seasons on this blog, different topics, different themes. There have been some years where time and life have gotten the better of me and I haven't been able to invest as much as I would like. But I have also had the same voice, I would say, since around that time when I truly found my flow and the poetic prose style that I love to adopt and that comes so naturally to me. I know that might not be everybody's cup of tea, but that is what really allows me to communicate my heart. And so it's my heart on a page. What I wanted to take you through is not just the growth and evolution of me as a writer or of the concepts and subject matter on the blog, but I also want to take you through some data, which might sound super boring, but I found it fascinating to kind of do a bit of a history lesson, a retrospective look back on the blog. But what you can expect is in the future, I'm going to only do this annually. I'm only going to look at a year in retrospect. So end of 2025, I'm going to look at, okay, this year, how many blogs did I post? How many people did we have coming to the site and viewing these posts? What themes did I cover? What countries did we reach, etc., etc. So just expect today is going to be very broad, holistic, 11 years worth of data. I'm not going to be able to do it justice, but if there is anything that you would like more information on, because I am just going to be skimming through it all, please comment, please let me know. Before we go on, go and grab yourself a coffee, a nice tea. We are about to get dug into the data, so let's go. Okay, so here we are on the WordPress site, my Jetpack statistics, and I'm going to set the date range to the start of 2014, which is when I started the blog, through to now. And that will give us a view of how I have impacted and reached different people over the years. In total, that's been 33.3k people, which I am honestly blown away by, because if all of those people were in one place, that's a lot of people. I know it might not be big in the scheme of things with other bloggers, but for me, I really truly just want to reach people's hearts, and so one heart is enough. So to have 33.3k of you, incredible. Now this visitors little toggle I'm showing you now, visitors are unique people who have come to the website, and views are people who've come back. So I've been consistently having people who've never come to the website encounter my words over the years. You can see over these years, as I just toggle, that I have had varying number of posts. Early days they were quite high, but then they started to decrease once I was full-time working from 2018. There was a massive dip in 22. I'm going to jump into why I think that was, but big dip. And then in recent years, I still have been posting, but not as consistently. Last year was my wedding, and so any spare time went to planning that. But I'm back on the bandwagon this year. And when we toggle to this other view, you can see the peaks and the troughs over time. Now, I have some theories as to why this might have been the case. I believe that at the start, because I hadn't really been clear on my target audience, I did attract more people, which is why I had my highest views in its first year. But once I was very clearly established as a faith-based blog, you can see my views did stabilize and it did decrease. The exception to that then was our classic friend COVID-19. We saw an increase in probably people's boredom. I don't like to think that it was boredom that drove them to the blog, but you never know. So let's move on. Now here is an interesting statistics overview. You can see what are my highest viewed posts and pages. The pages you can see they're in capital letters. They're literally just placeholders on the site, so of course people click on them for more information. The other ones are posts, so I'll dive into some of the details and stats behind those highest viewed posts. That's a little bit of a spoiler alert of which are my highest viewed posts. The other interesting stat that you can see on the right are where have people been referred to my blog from. Search engines are of course high up there. That would be Google and the like. So that's keyword searches, I imagine, people using phrases or terms and then encountering my blogs. That's the dream, is having good keyword searchability that people would find posts. The other top referrer you can see is Facebook, and that's because I do a lot of marketing of my blog on social media. I definitely have to pick up my game with the other social medias. As you can see, they could be much higher referring than they are. Now the next stats I love because it is the map of the world. It just shows how interconnected we are as a globe. These locations, it makes sense. Australia is at the top as most views because I am Australian, but then we have the US. We also have India, which I am suspecting it's because I have been to India twice. So those two separate occasions I did write blogs in relation to it. It means that people probably searched keywords and found it. Very random though. This next page, this is exciting. This map is basically green. What that means is that all of these countries have clicked onto my blog. Is that not the wildest thing? Russia, Mongolia. I'm not going to start pronouncing all these because I will absolutely mess it up. But honestly, isn't this wild? So many continents and varying degrees of views, I should say. Greenland, Iceland, huh? Like what? How did these people find my blog? I am amazed. And I think I just love that it's been so far reaching, the breadth, the depth. As you scroll down here and look with me, can we just appreciate how many colored flags there are? I am not gonna lie, I am very geographically challenged. I didn't even know this many countries existed. I mean, I'm sure I conceptually understood, but when you see it here, like this list goes on for forever. I'm sorry, like, but I have to show you every single country because I am obsessed. Even if it's a few views, I still just think that is incredible. Like, the fact that I even have any that haven't read my blog at this point, given this list, is wild to me. Incredible, incredible, incredible. Now let's look at a detailed breakdown of my top posts and pages. So I'll scroll through, you can have a little look. As I said before, there are pages intermixed here with some posts, so that's a bit confusing, but there is a bit of a range in terms of the quantity of views. You'll see I often sit around the couple hundred mark, which isn't bad. Again, I'm just thinking of how, if that many people were in the room right now, like that is a lot of people to be reading those blogs. There's some that I would say, not some, most of them are under 100, and we can interrogate maybe a different day why that might be the case. The different approaches I've taken with some of these blogs might influence why they are or are not popular. Maybe how controversial or taboo I have been has influenced that. I just don't know. But also, as I am scrolling, I am amazed how many blogs I have put out over the years. Guys, these are all words from my own heart. I will say some of these aren't live anymore, so if you see some there that you're like, I can't go and find that on the website, I'm sorry, that's not intention. It's just that over the years there were some that just didn't align with where my blog's direction was going, and so I have taken them down. But wild, 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 wild. Okay, it's time to go year by year. I'll do a quick review of each year. 2014, I did 30 posts, so I did quite a lot. This was also my highest viewed year, as we saw earlier. May have been because it was my first year, but I also was very frequent. When we go to 2015, we see that I did have a drop to 22 posts. So with that did come a drop in the viewership as well. 2016, I tick up to very high post year, 40 posts. When I went back and looked at this year, I saw that I was posting like almost weekly throughout some of the months of the year, which, like, I don't know what Jessie in 2016 was doing, but she was on fire. This may have corresponded with that period of time I was referring to where I had a real awakening and my heart was just flowing and pouring out words. I continued on that train in 2017, 37 posts, some major tick up in the word count as well, so I probably started to increase the size of my posts. By the time we get to 2018, we see change in the quantity. We've dipped down to 18, and this does coincide with when I did start full-time work. I'm still very impressed with myself that I was able to post 18 in that year. 2019, we were pretty consistent. It was just 17 posts in that year. Then we see a big drop in 2020. So despite this being COVID, when I should have been maybe more creative, I only did 10 posts. I think I was more consuming than producing. And there are seasons that I think where you're receiving before you can pour out, which is why I believe we saw a massive then tick up in 2021. So I went back to 17, which was around the benchmark for my while working full-time capacity. So that's great to see. It also was a year which we were coming out of the depths with COVID-19. In 2022 though, we saw a massive dip, and as I reflected on earlier, this was my lowest year for views. I was again in a consuming, refining, pruning season. So I wasn't pouring out as much, and I do again believe that that's good to actually acknowledge that and to not be producing in that time. Then we go to 2023. We don't see too much of an increase in posts this year either. We see 6. This was a big transition year for me. I moved up here to Brisbane from interstate, and so I was just finding my feet again. And in this year, I also broke my ankle and my foot. So there was a lot of recovery time physically. 2024, I mentioned it already. It was my year of wedding planning. I both got engaged and got married last year, and so it was a huge year. I was frantically planning the wedding with, less than 6 months. And I also was planning the honeymoon, which was over a month overseas. And so those were all consuming of my time. I'm honestly amazed that I was able to even produce 2 blogs in that time. That was a very quiet year. And that brings us to this year. I will do a proper annual look back on this year since I've now started doing this vlogging journey, but so far so good. I'm really proud of myself. I have got some momentum back again, and I have felt like I'm in a season where I am filled to overflowing again, and it's honestly the best feeling, and I really hope that that blesses you as well and not just me. This next slide, it's just a summary of what I've taken you through really quickly, but it does have some other stats that I just wanted to call out in particular. What I really like is that it has the average words per post, and I've alluded to this before, but I have kind of gone from a very short form blog style to very in-depth long form posts. They're essays. I feel like in an attention deficient culture, it's hard to get people reading posts this long, but it aligns to where my heart has been at in this season, and I really just want to do justice to the topics. And so that's why you have seen that increase over time. Now I am finally going to talk to a few specific posts. These are my highest viewed posts. To Manifest His Glory has had 1.9k views. This is incredible to me. I published this, as you can see there, in 2018. In that year itself, not too many people viewed it. It was published at the end of that year, but you'll just see there was a gradual tick up over time until last year. Somehow it blew up. My theory as to why this is my highest rated blog, what you see at the top is a quote. Now, when I was researching for this blog, I had encountered this quote in that year. I could not for the life of me find the source of who had said this quote or who had written it in a book. The struggle street with trying to find it led me on this rabbit hole in the search engine universe, and I eventually discovered it was Nelson Mandela, but it wasn't easy to find who the author was. Most websites that quoted who this came from said it was anonymous. As you'll see if you read this post, I highly reflect on Mandela's life as a lens of comparison as to the topic and the content in his quote. So without knowing the author of that quote, it would have been impossible for me to have even written this post to begin with. The reason I believe it has been such a popular post is because of that ambiguity around who this quote was from. If anyone had even encountered a few words of this quote or knew this quote existed and started to put keywords in to try and find it, I have a feeling they would have been directed to my blog because of how, from experience, I had found it really hard to find the origin of this quote. Let's go to my second highest rated blog, which is called Impulsive Love. This was published in 2017, which was in my final year of university. It was a reflection on the summer break. Summer break is December, January in Australia, and it's a story that was inspired by my grandparents and their impulsive love. It is a little bit later, but I forgot to talk you through one of my other posts, which is the Blessings Jar DIY. The reason I wanted to talk about this is when we look at the stats, I published this in 2014, so it was one of the first that I did. And when we see the most views were in that same year, and then it's completely petered off and fallen off the face of the earth. That's because I haven't gone down that niche of being a DIY blog. But what I did that I wanted to call out, at the time in 2014, I used the graphics, the photos that I had taken for this post, and I put them on Pinterest, and those pins ended up getting repinned, and that is what drove traffic to this blog at that point in time when it was very much an era of DIY. And so that's an example of, if you are jumping on a trend or something that is in at a time, it can do you favors for views, but as I saw, not sustainable. At that point I was experimenting though, so I can't be too hard on myself. But that's essentially all that I wanted to take you through In terms of stats, that was a lot. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a thematic analysis of the blogs and the posts at a different point in time. I was hoping to do that today, but I realized that it's probably a dedicated blog where I can do a thematic study. What types of topics have I done? The only other surprise that I had, if you have stayed around this long, I wanted to share with you the first few draft names that I had. Fragrance of Faith, Fashioned by Faith, which is my Instagram. At that point in time in 2014, I only had the one Instagram, and that was Fashioned by Faith. Then I had Grace Laced Faith. Oof, that's a tongue twister. I had Channel of Christ, Glory Reflector, Chasing the Light, Living Water. I feel like I was just quoting the Bible. So I think if I look back at those original names, I'm really glad that I ended up choosing Abundance of Lovely. That just shows that whatever your first brainstorm is, have an ideation session, get it all down, but go away, pray about it, think about it, and maybe you'll come up with something better. So that is the entire history of Abundance of Lovely. I have tried to be quick, but I've also tried to give context. If you have made it this far, thank you so much. Please subscribe for more. I'd love any ideas that you have for videos as well. But otherwise, stay tuned, take care, and let's discover the fullness of love together.